Okay, welcome to the Gut Club's fifth installment of our new podcast. And today we welcome back Stephen Wright from Healthy Gut. Stephen, how are you doing today? It's great to see you.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be back. And yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah. Where are you right now?
We are in a hotel in Scottsdale.
Ah, okay, Scottsdale, Arizona. We're in South Florida. I'm in Palm Beach County, and I have to let everyone know that our air conditioning went out yesterday. So if I look a little glossy toward the end of this talk, you'll know why. I'm sweating. There may be some wardrobe malfunctions. Everyone keep an eye peeled for this. But in general, it feels pretty good. It's in the 80s here. What kind of temps you have there?
I'm not sure. It's been hovering between like 100, 105 or so.
Oh my Lord. But as they say, low humidity, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the weird thing. You know, I grew up in Michigan, high humidity, and I would say like 110 super low humidity Scottsdale feels about like a 90% humidity day. So
Yeah.
people get a little confused by the numbers and how much the humidity makes a difference.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm from Chicago, so we're similar to Michigan, that's for sure. Um, Although I have to say, I don't think I'd be moving back to Chicago anytime soon. I'm enjoying Florida. How do you like Arizona?
It's great. It's great. Yeah, we're spending a little time here right now, and
Yeah.
I like it.
One of our focuses is not just personal health, but also planetary health. And I've been following things like the wildfires. About a month ago, there were big fires in New Mexico. I think you may have got some smoke from that. Did you?
No, we didn't see any smoke. I think it blew right on by us because we're a little bit south
Okay.
from where the fires were.
Okay, good. Because when you talk about dry heat and how that's connected to drought, one of the areas that I love to research and actually published a children's book about is rain-making bacteria. Have I sent you my book? I need to send you that.
Yeah, you should send me your book. I haven't seen it.
I'm going to do it. Yeah, it's really an adult book in disguise about rain-making bacteria. And, you can have constipation in the clouds. It's not just human beings, and how that relates to drought and then wildfires, and that's been a problem the last several years all over the globe. So we're getting into the season these days. It's tough stuff, but we're going to be focusing more about our personal health. And your specialty has been butyrate. Stephen has been marketing. How long have you been marketing Tributyrin-X? How long has that been going on?
I was just looking at it for a different project. We started the formulation in early 2019, but we didn't get it to market until I think the beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I happen to have a bottle on my desk. I can show people Tributyrin-X.
One of the originals.
What made you call it Tributyrin-X? Why the X?
Well, I needed something to just be a little bit more fancy, but also I thought it was an improvement. Like it was a multiplier over the previous generations of not only Tributyrin products, but butyrate products.
Okay. Well, it's a nice name. I like it. It could be a good name for maybe a professional wrestler, Tributyrin-X. I don't know. If you need a mascot. Just kidding. That's our gut club humor for the day. There may be more, so everyone keep an eye out. So we talked for about an hour and a half a few months ago in our first conversation. We covered a lot of ground. There'll be a link to that conversation. So we're not going to cover so much the basics today. We can talk a little bit about the basics. First of all, what's the difference between tributyrin and sodium butyrate, which is probably the more popular form of butyrate that's available on the market? And what made you choose tributyrin over sodium butyrate?
Yeah, so sodium butyrate is butyric acid bonded with salt. That's like the chemical nature of it. Tributyrin is 3 butyric acid molecules bonded by a fat or a glycerol, so a fat molecule. So chemically, they're very different, and that actually really matters. In most people don't really want to talk about it, but it actually super matters, because in the digestive tract, in the upper small intestine, any salt is basically goes through the gut in a medium, or I mean a gradient through the medium. So if there's more salt inside of what you just ate, it's going to rapidly go across the gut wall. And so that's what happens with sodium butyrate, is as soon as the capsule opens inside of your small intestine, that's going to be sucked across the gut wall. Versus tributyrin, pharmacokinetically, it needs a little lipase to break apart those 3 butyric acid molecules. And then they actually have to either get consumed inside the gut or go into the blood vessels behind the gut. And so they're actually very different in how they are absorbed. And what turned me on to a different type of butyric product was just that I couldn't really get the results that the study suggested you could get from sodium butyrate. I had all the symptoms of low butyrate. I was just frustrated. Like, why is this not working? And so it had me seeking, as I do for most products, just like, why? Well, okay, what does this matter? And then I found a lot of research, not a lot, but a few studies suggesting that tributyrin had been studied at even like significantly higher dosages, like 10x the dosages of sodium butyrate in humans, and had a higher, potentially a better safety profile in humans. And so together, between the better safety profile and some animal data that suggested that oral tributyrin beat sodium butyrate IVs in mice. So basically they gave oral tributyrin to mice, and then they gave a higher dosage of IV sodium butyrate and measured the serum levels in their blood. And the oral dosage gave a better serum reading. That's like mind blowing. That never happens.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that had me seeking this solution.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your personal experience. But before we do, I don't want to forget to ask you this question, about absorption of the product. My understanding is that it would mainly be absorbed in the small intestine. So there are people, for instance, in our Gut Club stool test discussion group, which, by the way, we've got about 9,000 people there now, and some real geniuses. We've been tackling some very interesting subjects. Maybe we'll mention a couple of them later. But people are concerned, if it's being absorbed in the small intestine, is it affecting the colon? And in the past, I have found one research paper that showed that it did affect colonic microbes. But if it's being absorbed mainly in the small intestine, I guess it's also going into systemic circulation and eventually reaching the colon. What's your view on that?
Well, just like the name of the Facebook group and for this podcast, this is really an exploration discussion. So I'm learning as fast as everybody else. I may be a little bit ahead of the curve just because I've been focused on it for 2 years, and I have some PhDs that I get to work with and talk to. But my understanding at this moment in time is that, especially for sodium butyrate and CalMag butyrates, they're going to be pretty much all absorbed in the upper small intestine. And they still have benefits to inflammation and stuff related to the colon, to the large intestine area. And so one thing we all want a nice narrative, right? Our brains really like nice narratives. And wouldn't it be so nice to say that, oh, we delivered the butyrate down to the large intestine and therefore it made the changes. But what if the systemic changes through lowering of inflammation or regulating the immune system, things like this, are actually what allow a different microbiome to grow, or a different healthy large intestine to be created? So I think that it's unfortunately really complex down there. And I do believe actually that tributyrins in general, our product and other tributyrins, although I'm skeptical of any powdered tributyrins, but any liquid tributyrins, I do believe are penetrating much deeper than their sodium butyrate or CalMag butyrate, brothers and sisters, if you will, just because of the need for lipase and the fact that there's different reported outcomes in clinic between the two sets of products that would suggest maybe you're getting deeper penetration. Okay,
that's really interesting. And also there's something really important that comes to mind. That's how butyrate and other short chain fatty acids in the small intestine are lowering pH. So you have a more acidic pH. And in my construct, there's an inverse relationship between the pH of the gut and blood pH. So if you have a more acidic, healthy gut, you'll have, more alkaline, healthy blood.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to this. I was looking at this like over 10 years ago. I need to update my knowledge, but these short chain fatty acids are contributing to the pH balance of the gut.
Yeah.
Probably in a larger way than I realize. So,
well, I think we're on the same team for sure around pH and oxygen status of the gut being two major drivers of a healthy gut ecosystem. And I do think that's where these short chain fatty acids are some of the most important characters, or the actors, if you will, in that orchestra of things that are happening. And I do think that might be how you can see that there's a lot of customers, for instance, who are able to suddenly tolerate significant portions of food, or like their intolerances drop really rapidly. Is we are resetting potentially the pH and resetting potentially the oxygen levels. Even if it's happening higher, it should translate lower potentially. That's what some of the PhDs in Spain think, is that if you affect things in the upper small intestine, even with sodium butyrate, there's a spreading effect, because essentially you're changing the input. And so therefore the next inputs and the next inputs as you go down through the small intestine theoretically have to change as well, probably.
Oh, exactly. And, the small intestine, I like to think of, especially the duodenum, as the center of all health. And if you have an imbalance of microbes in that location, I like to call it the beginning of the end, because at that point, you can't really absorb your nutrients. Even most water that we ingest is absorbed. I think something like 80% of the water is absorbed in the small intestine. I've been looking at things like duodenal mucosal resurfacing, it's DMR. And also I recently discovered there's a new kind of a glue, they call it. And it's a kind of a poly that coats the small intestine and can also be a way to deliver therapeutics. So, we've got basically an epidemic of small intestinal dysbiosis. And that's a big deal. It's even related to things like, for instance, high Bacteroides of the small intestine has been called a reason for undernutrition in children. And so, lo and behold, we have a really sad problem on Earth known as childhood growth stunting. It's also connected to poor sanitation. So, and this all starts in the gut. And later we'll talk about prebiotics and how we can shift flora in that location, and also the colon, and how those prebiotics are resulting in raised butyrate. And there are a number of different prebiotics where that's the end goal. So, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of butyrate, even in the brain. Okay, so why don't you mentioned oxygen? I want to share a screen and show you some of the Gut Club's work recently, and we can talk about these things. So this is the screen we talked about in our first conversation about, basically how butyrate is signaling the colonocytes of the gut to mop up oxygen, and then this leads to benefiting anaerobic bacteria and overall health, because the aerobic bacteria are largely the pathogenic bacteria, things like proteobacteria. So we talked about that a lot, but this is an example of a photo exploration of the Gut Club. We've got dozens of these on our Facebook page, and we also have a website. I can show you our page for Healthy Guts affiliation. We're a proud affiliate of Stephen Wright's company, Healthy Gut, and here you can see our page, and And there's quite a lot of information on this page. And then you can place an order if you'd like on the Healthy Gut website and get $15 off. So here's Stephen's website, Healthy Gut.
And we'll throw in free US shipping for the lower 48.
Okay, fantastic. So basically, this is where we post photos, and we'll go through a few of them today as jumping off points for our conversation. But there are a number of comments in each photo. This photo has right now 89 comments exploring the health benefits of butyrate. And we started this back in 2019, April 2019. But toward the end, I made some discoveries about the gut muscle axis. And so, this is amazing stuff. I never realized how important butyrate was for healthy muscle. Tell me about it, Stephen. What do you know about this topic? Because I'm just beginning to learn about it.
Yeah, same here. You posted, and I think I found one additional study of, okay, let's back up a little bit. So muscle is super important for aging. It's super important for healthy living. It's like something that is sort of underappreciated. Loss of muscle is associated with falling. It's associated with lack of mobility. And so if you want to like healthily age, if you want to, go past your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, and you want to live on your own, not in a home, not with a walker, things like that, you need to care about your muscle mass because those are highly correlated to living a really nice life. And then if we look into like, what are the things that are correlated with aging as well, we have loss of short chain fatty acids in several studies in humans, and butyrate being one of them. And then we have these studies that you found, Keith, where there's actually measured lower butyrate and lowered muscle mass in these elderly individuals. I think most of them were between 60 and 80, with the mean right around 70 or so. That one, what's that one say? 64. I think the postmenopausal woman one was about 70. And so I am still exploring this, but I do know that we have a customer base who are the physique competitors. And I didn't know about this until about 6 months ago, but they started sending me emails and messages and saying like, hey, we're using less basically in performance enhancing drugs while using Tributyrin and your HCl guard and your enzymes. And basically their belief was that they're able to get more protein synthesis by using the HCl and the enzymes. They're able to eat more protein, uptake more, and that's working in combination with the butyrate, with the Tributyrin, to stimulate genes related to muscle growth and satellite cells.
Okay, well, I think we need to invite the bodybuilding community to the Gut Club stool test discussion group. They may be interested in, on a monthly basis, testing their stool for microbial composition and focusing on butyrate production. Because
they're typically ahead of the curve, right? Because they don't really care about health a lot. They mostly care about performance.
Yeah. Well, we crossed paths actually with a lot of these people at the Ancestral Health Symposium in 2013 in Atlanta. I noticed there were quite a lot of bodybuilders as part of that community. I think it goes along with the carnivore community. But more and more, I think people are realizing how important it is to have balanced flora, and a carnivore diet could lead to imbalanced flora. It might be good for a short period to reduce inflammation, but overall, it's not seen these days to be the long-term solution, although there's still a lot of people that tend to believe that.
Well, I don't know how you could assume it is if you have a low FODMAP diet. We have low FODMAP data that shows after 8 weeks, your butyrate production starts to drop off, your short chain fatty acid production drops off heavily. So if you do a full removal of all vegetable content, I guess it's an extrapolation, but I don't think it's logically that far to leap here to suggest that short chain fatty acid production is going to fall off a cliff at some point there.
Okay. Well, here's a paper I was showing a little bit earlier. We didn't talk about it yet, but if you have adverse muscle composition, you basically are associated with mortality. There are reasons for this, and a lot of it has to do with blood sugar balance. In fact, let me go back and show you that paper. This is one from 2021 about muscle mass on blood glucose level. This is all related to the global scourge known as diabetes. And diabetes can actually hinder your muscle for various reasons, but also muscle can perhaps prevent diabetes because it's giving a place for insulin to do its job and shuttling amino acids into muscle. I have to relearn this and update my knowledge, but my understanding is there's competition for amino acids to cross the blood-brain barrier after, say, something sweet like a carbohydrate is ingested. And tryptophan is actually competing with the other amino acids to cross blood-brain barrier. So you can see how that can lead to an imbalance of neurotransmitters, considering tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, and that can impact the glutamatergic system. But for tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier, it's competing with other amino acids, and insulin is what starts that process, in my understanding. And it's basically shuttling the other amino acids into muscle. And if muscle isn't there to do that, then you end up with worse problems. I think I'm showing my ignorance here. I need to learn more about this process, but those are the bare bones based on my general understanding. So it's really interesting to consider how muscle and butyrate interact. I think this is a big market for your company, actually, because as you point out, it's also having a lot to do with aging.
Well, I think there's something else to throw in here, which is that there are studies showing exercise increases gut diversity and better microbiome as well. So it's almost like a triangle or a circle where it seems like better muscle is better for aging, it's better for blood glucose. The butyrate and potentially supplements may enhance that process, but also the fact of exercising is correlated with a better microbiome in and of itself without supplementation. And so together, it's sort of the circle of life in a way, or the circle of muscle and butyrate for better health and aging. Yeah.
And as we know, almost by definition, aging means a shift in flora. It's not just about diversity, but it's also about losing the protective bacteria. And that includes things like bifidobacteria and lactobacillus. And instead, and the protective Firmicutes, and instead a rise in Bacteroides. You have these two main phyla are Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. And so, you start out in life with high levels of bifidobacteria, which are actinobacteria, but that's with breastfeeding. But then, with solid food, the butyrate producing Clostridia then take over, and bifido goes down. But as we age, bifidobacteria is going down until the point where it may not exist. And these are really important for what's known as cross-feeding the butyrate producers, because bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, they're producing acetate and lactate, and those are the precursors for butyrate production. So as we age, we're losing these butyrate producers as well as the cross feeders.
Do you take a bifidobacter probiotic at all, Keith?
Yeah, I take
just out
one.
Of curiosity.
Yeah, I do. I take one that includes bifidobacteria, and it's also got a lot of it's sort of like kefir in a capsule. I also make my own kefir, but that's lactobacillus dominant after 48 hours. But I have been taking bifidobacteria and also a lactobacillus probiotic. Are you taking any of that?
I got my eyes on doing another test. I've been testing the seed probiotic for the last 2 months, just
Mhm.
because everybody was talking about it, and so I wanted to see if I noticed anything.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go on like a super hardcore bifido, train. But
Mhm.
I'm actually a rare, like I'm not somebody to model a lot after, because I woke up in a hospital when I was 16 or 17.
Mm.
And I had passed out at work. And when they had done a GI stool culture at the hospital, of course, that's not the greatest of standards. And this was also like, I don't know, 2001 or 2002. All they found was bifidobacter. So I had been on a antibiotic for almost 4 years straight for acne, for cystic acne, and it basically had wiped out my entire GI flora, and all that was left was bifidobacter when they ran the culture. And so I actually have stayed away from bifido heavy products, because I sort of have assumed that I may always have a propensity now to
Mm.
be a little bit more dominant there. But I think it's time
Okay.
to try again.
It would be interesting to see your stool test results. Um, if if you'd like, I'll give you a complimentary consult if you have the
Yeah, for sure.
results.
I started running the test against each other to see if they were the same. And spoiler
Oh,
alert, they're not.
okay, yeah, yeah. That's that's why they make chocolate and vanilla. Um, so there are some people in the stool test discussion group of the Gut Club on Facebook that are making yogurt with bifidobacteria. You know, it's kind of a cost-effective way to do it, um, and you can have higher doses of bifidobacteria. And one person talks about how it basically remodeled his gut. I thought that was really interesting. Um, you know, making your own kefir is another thing. There is bifidobacteria in kefir also. Tell me about your experience about, you know, you've been on a long journey of repairing yourself and teaching people. I mean, I know your history is with the specific carbohydrate diet, the SCD diet. So you've been an educator for like 12 years at least, you know, maybe longer. And you're a young guy, but you were inspired to learn these things and then help other people in the process. What was your experience when you started taking butyrate? What happened?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've tried a lot of stuff over the last 12, 13 years. And like I said, I tried several brands of sodium butyrate, but I actually didn't get into butyrates until about 3.5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I did not see anything, but what I was dealing with at the time was extreme life stress and events happening. This was prior to the pandemic. But life was kicking me and waking me up in certain ways. And so most of my GI issues actually came raging back, which should be of no surprise to anybody who's looked into stress and the GI tract. And so anyways, I was trying to get rid of bloating, which is always my weakness. And I had gotten it mostly away, but it was still kind of there a little annoying intermittently. And then I was starting to have some food reactions again, some like histamine like issues.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, let's get into this butyrate stuff and let's go deep. And so that's when I started trying the various sodium butyrates. I really didn't notice anything. I was like, I don't think this is happening for me. So maybe I don't need this. And so I started playing with prebiotics, but many prebiotics tend to, at least at the time, they tend to bloat me. And so I don't play with them. I only use the designer ones. Basically, they're the ones that I do best on. So after that, I got my hands on the Tributyrin product that we have now for testing.
Hmm.
And my experience was that it helped resolve some of that last 20% of bloating, and it really knocked out for instance, I was having red wine, like flushing and sort of like histamine like reactions after red wine, and a little bit of dairy stuff was kind of coming back for me, which back in the day, I had a big dairy sensitivity that would like swell my nasal cavity shut. And I was off of it for like 3 years. And then I reintroduced it successfully and hadn't had an issue, but it was kind of coming back. And so I was able to notice that with the product, I had less bloating, but not like, again, remember I was dealing with like a little amount of it, like a 20 to 30% of it. And I knocked that in half. And then I seemed to get less histamine issues. And so then I, of course, do what I do, which is I got to find the limits to these products, because that's part of my role in bringing stuff to the market, as well as just, what I do best in some weird way is touch the hot stove. And so I was doing really good at 3 capsules a day, but I wanted to find the upper limit, because with most butyrates, and including definitely with our product, the upper limit will typically be constipation. And so I got up to 6 capsules and got super constipated, like 2 days, no stools. And I was like, okay, that's definitely too much for my gut. So after that, after I did that process, I now only use about 2 capsules a day. And with that, I just have more chance of a bristle number 4, like everything just is kind of more settled in my gut. And then of course, because I've done so much research on the possibilities for better immune regulation, better, less lung inflammation, less osteoporosis, better muscle growth, things like this, better sleep. That's the other thing that I noticed was my deep sleep scores on my Oura ring almost doubled.
Wow.
Which is shocking for me, because I have a graveyard of stuff that I've tried to improve my deep sleep numbers. And so that is the other thing that kept me taking it, and is one of the most fascinating things I've learned about this product.
There's kind of a crossroads between sleep and constipation, and that's tryptophan. Actually, I was trying to figure out why a high dose of butyrate might lead to constipation, and discovered some research showing that butyrate affects the way tryptophan moves across the cell. And of course, tryptophan is the precursor of serotonin, which is then converted to melatonin. So right there, you have an interesting connection, because
so is more serotonin, and you actually know this stuff way better than I do at this point. So is more serotonin in the gut associated with constipation or diarrhea?
Diarrhea. But
okay, that's what I thought.
Low serotonin is in gut-derived serotonin is associated with constipation.
Okay, so you're thinking that butyrate may deplete serotonin levels in the gut.
I'm wondering, maybe this is a little too deep for me. This is, we're treading pretty deep water here.
Okay.
We'd be speculating quite a lot about this, but I mean, just to ponder how butyrate could affect the neurotransmitter levels in the gut. Serotonin from the gut doesn't cross blood-brain barrier, but melatonin from the gut does. That's another interesting fact that could be explaining how melatonin can reach the brain, and by way of a butyrate supplement. It's doing something to neurotransmitter levels in the gut, which are regulated by gut microbes. In fact, largely the butyrate producers are responsible for the secretion of serotonin through the cells of the gut. So that's another closed loop right there. It's mainly Clostridia responsible for that. Clostridia have a bad name. Everyone thinks they're bad, but they're really the main feature of a healthy gut. That's the main
amazing.
Firmicutes. Yeah, they're given a bad name from C. diff, so everyone thinks and botulism, but the Clostridia are the main butyrate producers. All right, why don't we talk a little bit about a couple other things? Maybe we'll make this a short and sweet talk, but I just wanted to share a couple things with you. Let me go back to my screen share for a second.
And hopefully, as you're switching screens here, that listeners of the discussion group and of the Gut Club here can help us, maybe unravel some of the serotonin, butyrate, neurotransmitter stuff, because it's complicated. I've tried to dive into it, and it's I get lost real quickly.
I'm not doing it justice right now, that's for sure. But just to know that simple fact that butyrate production is connected with the way tryptophan moves across the cell. I need to get more involved in those mechanics. But a couple other photos from the Gut Club we can look at real fast. This is something that has to do with what's on everyone's mind these days, and that is antiviral immunity. what's a more important subject than that these days? Well, it just so happens to be that butyrate is one of the important short chain fatty acids that is regulating type 1 interferons. And I'm just beginning to scratch the surface about how important interferons are to antiviral immunity. Let me just say real briefly here, and this is going to make you blush, Stephen, but I have a theory that, that this reprogramming of our immune systems by both the virus and also the new vaccines, we're allowed to say that word here, may be connected with repressing type 1 interferons. And maybe that's why we're seeing monkeypox popping up all over the globe, because these other viruses and possibly even influenza, now we're seeing influenza in May. We've never seen this before. Viruses are acting differently than they ever have. So our immune systems are being reprogrammed. It's and that first step in antiviral immunity are these type 1 interferons. There are actually 3 types of interferons, type 1, 2, and 3. It's a deep subject. Again, we're treading deep water. This is way above my pay grade here, but I enjoy learning about these things and sharing and learning aloud on the Gut Club. But lo and behold, type 1 interferons are known to be about microbes regulating that immune response. And butyrate figures largely in that. And here, in this research, they're talking about other viruses. But I thought that was really interesting. This is another more recent photo exploration. I just posted this in the Gut Club last week, and it's about how antibiotic treatment actually lowered type 1 interferons, but normal flora regulates a raising of type 1 interferons. I think that's really profound, how gut microbes are driving this systemic antiviral immunity based on interferon priming, it's known as. I don't know. What's your gut feeling on this?
Pun intended, or no?
Yeah. It's,
I think that last slide you had up is actually pretty important. There is one study showing that butyrates help restore mucosal barrier. And I am a big champion right now of like, hey, the mucus gets a bad rap. It's, it's gross, it's sticky, it comes out of your body in lots of places. But look, the mucous membrane is one of the biggest things that's keeping it's needed for a healthy microbiome, but B, it's keeping your small intestine wall, basically protected and keeping things away from the gut barrier that shouldn't be there. And I think in that last slide you just showed there, one of the reasons that antibiotics damage happens is due to damage to the mucosal membrane. And so one of my theories is that if I could afford to run a controlled trial, and if we knew how to measure it, that our product actually would help restore mucosal membrane thickness.
That's huge, Stephen, because that also can relate to the epithelial linings everywhere. And there's one study from a long time ago that showed that if you don't eat fiber, which is what is used to produce mucus, then you have a break in the mucosal barrier and microbes basically eat the host. So yeah, and these are cells, that are intimately associated with nerve bundles and fibers that are basically hardwired to the brain. There's something called a neuropod cell that's a direct connection to the brain. So yeah, you need to eat fiber. Let's talk about, this is the last photo I wanted to share with you. It was something I discovered recently, actually in the Gut Club stool test discussion group. And this is about prebiotics that are actually leading toward the production of butyrate. So inulin is one a lot of people know about. It's not well tolerated by some people because it can feed pathogenic microbes as well as bifidobacteria and lactobacillus. But the idea is inulin, which is found in a lot of different foods. It can feed lactate and, I'm sorry, it feeds these lactobacilli and bifido, and they produce lactate and acetate, as we talked about earlier, which are the precursors to butyrate. So, you have your F. Prausnitzii that are one of the main butyrate producers, Roseburia as well. So
is Roseburia a Clostridium XI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it is in the Clostridium cluster 4. There's two main butyrate producing clostridial clusters, 4 and 14A, and they're in Roman numerals. I think Roseburia is in 4. I have to double check that. But this is really interesting stuff. Then you have Xylan, that's wheat, and this is an interesting thing. It can raise Bacteroides, which magically raises butyrate by way of modulating the immune system. I've got to double check this. I think it's raising IgA, and so that's kind of an indirect way of raising butyrate through wheat germ, for instance.
Yeah, there's also purified XOS designer prebiotics that I can tolerate. For one's called Pretex. There's other ones out there that
I tried XOS once just to see what it was about, and I did not tolerate it well. I also didn't tolerate PHTG too well.
Okay, I can tolerate that very well, but I don't do well on inulin.
Interesting. You may have high levels of something like Klebsiella that's known to also consume inulin. So this is a hot button in the autism community. Actually, they're trying to figure out ways of raising beneficial microbes. Recently, I've been learning.
Is HMO, is that milk up top there?
Is that what you say?
Is that milk oligosaccharides, or what is that, HMO?
Yeah, exactly. That's human milk oligosaccharides.
Okay.
So that's breast milk, basically. And one of the more popular forms of HMO you can buy is 2FL. That's one of the main components of breast milk that's known to raise bifidobacteria, but it can also feed Bacteroides. So once again, we're back to that, immunomodulating bacteria. You can have too much of a good thing, though, with Bacteroides, but it's really an important one because one study showed a single strain of Bacteroides, which B. fragilis, attenuated autistic symptoms. That's really interesting. And it may have to do with how it raises butyrate by way of the immune system. But in other cases, it's HMOs are raising bifidobacteria, which can be up to 90% of the healthy breastfed infant gut. And so again, you see that it's raising the precursors of butyrate. So
which is really important. I mean, I don't know that it's been explicitly said on this show yet, but people often, at least people I interact with, are often confused when they take in a prebiotic sometimes, but they don't do when they do their follow-up test, they don't see an increase in butyrate. And I think people forget that there's butyrate, there's this cross-pollination. You need butyrate producers. So you could take in a prebiotic for butyrate, and you could have the bugs that degrade that and make it ready for the butyrate producers. But if you don't have either the degraders or the producers, that chain of prebiotics and fiber consumption could be broken. And that's extremely frustrating for me, and I think for everybody.
Yeah, when you were talking about your own personal story, and things like your nasal cavity becoming inflamed, all these allergic reactions are now thought to be regulated by gut microbes. I was at a restaurant last Friday. It's kind of a funny story. I was sitting outside, and on Las Olas. It's a nice street in Fort Lauderdale, having Mexican food, and the 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 wait person. Can I say waiter? You can say waiter, maybe not. Wait person. I can say he. Okay, he
Yeah.
was he was asking if that was my attempt at humor, not very well done. But he was asking if we were allergic to anything. And have you ever had that done at a restaurant?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
okay.
definitely in Boulder for sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I guess it's more common. But I had to suggest to him that the deadly peanut allergy now is being attenuated by oral FMT. It's basically capsules of poop. And he was quite amused, but seriously interested in this. And I just had to briefly say that it's the microbes regulating immune response, leading to an allergic reaction. So as you say, if you don't have those important microbes, and in fact, the peanut allergy was identified as being deficient in Clostridium and also Lactobacillus. There's a lot of research about this. So yeah, you can swallow poop these days. I recently learned that mangoes, I have a mango here. We have a mango tree outside. It's in season now, it's dropping. It's actually got the precursors of butyrate. So it's
Yeah,
a
it does.
prebiotic.
It does. I've looked at those mango studies. Also, if you're constipated, eat a mango or two a day, and you can take that away.
A few years ago, I ate 10 a day and I gained too much weight. It was rough, but the mangoes are delicious. We have Hayden mangoes. These are like the Rolls Royce of mangoes. They're amazing. They're dropping now. So, Stephen, why don't we wrap it up, because we've covered a lot of ground. Is there something we've missed? Maybe we can.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's important for everybody to know this was intended to be an exploration and just talk about things that we're interested in with regards to microbes, and specifically butyrate and its impact throughout the body. And also just that there's a new generation of supplements that can help restore balance. My goal with Tributyrin is not to have necessarily everybody on it forever. It's to reestablish that homeostasis in the gut such that you can tolerate these foods or these prebiotics or these probiotics, whatever you need to actually rebuild the gut diversity and the gut ecosystem. I think that was at least the missing step for me in clinic, and what I saw with like my clinician friends was that you try to give, partially hydrolyzed guar gum or any of these prebiotics, and you knew that somebody needed them to have a healthy microbiome, but you couldn't get past the small intestine. You couldn't get past the fermentation from whatever was happening in the small intestine. And so the cool thing about the new butyric acid supplements is you can potentially bypass that, reestablish some homeostasis, and then reintroduce these fibers. Hopefully, I think that's the goal.
Yeah. It's all about balance, and that is what regulates what could become an asymptomatic person. Someone who's resilient and can handle things that other people just can't.
Right.
For a number of reasons. Before I let you go, though, tell us about your new, I guess it's an immunomodulating product. I need to learn about this. What is this?
Yeah, we'll get you out some product if you're interested. But we are the first company to bring to market what is called paraprobiotics have been on the market, but no one's ever combined them before. And so what we did is there's a certain strains of microbes where the researchers found that the cell membrane changes as they grow from immature cell to mature cell. And if you kill them at certain life cycle points and then introduce them to mice or humans, the receptors as well as the membrane on the cell is different, and it causes differential changes in animals and in humans. And so they've found certain bugs that they heat kill at certain immature stages, and then they preferentially modulate the immune system and are kind of like adaptogens for the immune system. And so I was looking for to create a product, just for immune health in the current world we're in. And I was specifically looking for studied strains in humans. And what I found was the research was actually way more powerful in these heat-killed or paraprobiotic strains. And so we combined 3 of them that have, each of them has like over 5 studies on the humans alone together. And each one was selected also because not only the studies, but the mechanism of action. So we have, in case people don't know, we have the adaptive immune system and the innate immune system. And, you know, the innate immune system is right there for the first line of defense. It's your inflammation, it's your natural killer cells, it's your white blood cells. But over time, it needs to train those antibodies, and that's the adaptive side. And that's where you get into the Th1 and the Th2 stuff that people talk about a lot. And you can get into allergies and autoimmunity and all kinds of crazy stuff over there. And so what I learned was that, like, we're probably all entering life and going through life with like maybe some imbalance. And so if we just make things stronger, we make the imbalance bigger. And so I wanted to see if I could make an adaptive product that would help balance and make the immune system smarter, essentially. And so some of the strains, one strain was selected for its Th2 properties, one was selected for Th1, another strain was selected because it selectively boosts both sides. It does these plasmatic dendritic cells and sort of the crosstalk between the two, which can also break apart. And then it's a base of beta glucans, which is just has a ton of history in boosting secretory IgA in humans and doing lots of other really cool things. And so if we're looking at it from a gut immune system and a gut immune situation, which is how I see the world, beta glucans and secretory IgA are just a no-brainer. And then to introduce these 3 strains was just a, you know, an idea that I thought was important. And so far the feedback's been pretty cool. It's definitely helping certain populations of people.
So is it a combination of a probiotic and beta glucans?
Yeah,
that
so
what
it's
it is?
3, it's 3 heat-killed probiotics and beta glucans.
How fascinating. That's really interesting stuff. I'm gonna look more closely at which ones you chose, which heat-killed probiotics. A lot of people don't realize even dead bacteria are good bacteria in terms of being immunomodulating. So
yeah, totally. It's kind of a misconception. It's been a big marketing push out there from supplement companies to push that they need to be alive for them to have effect, and that's just not even close to the truth.
It's so interesting because they have a cell wall with substances that signal immune response. Is one of them Lactobacillus plantarum by chance?
It is. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen some studies about dead L. plantarum.
Yeah, HK 137.
Okay, how interesting. Wow.
Yeah, one of them is a dead plantarum, one's a dead acidophilus, and the other one is, oh, I got the bottle right here, actually. The other one is a Lactococcus lactis.
Oh, interesting. That's these are prevalent in kefir, actually. Show us the bottle real fast. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, hollow immune. Fantastic. Yep. How interesting. I'm going to need that because I'm turning 61 in a couple of months, and I would like to stay on the planet for a little bit longer. So, Stephen, once again, thank you so much for being, you know, just enthusiastic about sharing knowledge and everything that you bring to your community. You should be proud of your work. Thank you so much for joining us again. Hopefully, we can help people attain balance. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for listening, and thanks for having me.
Wonderful. All right. I would send you some mangoes, but they would be rotten by the time they got to you in Arizona. But I can send you coconuts. They would be good. And I'll send you my Rainmaking Bacteria children's book.
Yeah, I actually want to read that. That would be great.
Fantastic. All right, Stephen. We'll be in touch. Thank you again.
Thanks, Keith.
From Palm Beach County with love, this is Keith Bell of the Gut Club signing out. Everyone be well. Stay well.